It has also had um, very big demonstration twice, actually, in Copenhagen with 20,000 people took part. And Roger, he spoke there very passionately. So we have invited him to discuss the issue of race in Denmark, why those protests are all over the world in support of the Black Lives Matters, but also is Denmark a racist country or not? And what should we do with all those slave traders and the statues and the name of the cities? So, Roger, thank you very much for taking time to come to our program. Before we go and talk about these serious issues, I know that you have started an institute. It's called Courage Institute. Why did you start an institute, and what are the reason for that and the purpose of that institute?
Yes, so thank you very much for having me on your program. So the Courage Institute deals with inclusion and diversity. And what I've come to realize, being a member of parliament and working with human rights as a human rights campaigner, is that it is the awareness and the knowledge and the lack of action that is inhibiting Denmark from, casting away its racist history and becoming a more inclusive and open society. So the Institute's main focus is to develop inclusion and diversity within our business life in the civil sector. And we do that by setting up a diploma education on a master's level to teach, HR people, to teach teachers and so forth, how they in practice can work with the dynamics of an inclusive and diverse society, how they design their processes to do that. And I think that will actually push the progressive agenda for equality for everyone forward a lot faster than we can do in Parliament.
You have been member of Parliament for Alternative Party. One of your ex-colleagues, who is the spokesperson of Danish People Party, and we all know what that party stands for, he very recently said, there is no racism in Denmark. Don't exaggerate this issue. Is it true that we have no racism in Denmark?
No, and it's ignorant and it's stupid
to say that,
to bring such a statement forth, because we have PhD after PhD after PhD that show us the structural discrimination and racism in Denmark. We have research from Aarhus University, from Copenhagen University, from Roskilde University, from Rockwool, from Institute of Human Rights. There are so many evidence-based cases here to show us that yes, we have a structural problem, and the fact that people are allowed to make this statement, and we're not testing that statement up against a scientist, a researcher, is just also to allow these statements to pervade the Danish mindset that maybe we don't have a problem. We have a problem. It's not as big as being killed in the street just for being black in America, but still we have problems.
But then the question is, last week there was a survey about the Danish opinion poll, where 51% Danes actually said that there is no racism in Denmark.
Yes, and I think that's very interesting.
Why is it so?
That's because we have a very, very simplified perception of what racism is. Racism, you have to hate someone's color and you have to be angry or mean with them purposely. Otherwise, you can't be racist. And that is not how racism works.
It has changed now, actually.
If you read the research, if you are aware of the racial dynamics of a racist society, then you will know that racism is a lot more than that. Racism is what inhibits some people from experiencing a life of freedom at the same level as everybody else.
In the society.
And take part in the society. And these structures are not mean. They're just there because we don't see them. The majority of the citizens do not see them. And this is what we need to work towards, being more present in the mindsets of the regular Dane, so they can actively participate and contribute to eradicating this racism.
But Roger, when the Danish media and the academics and the politicians continuously say there is no racism in Denmark, doesn't it affect people's way of thinking?
Yeah, I just spoke today with all of the heads of the editors-in-chief in the Danish newspapers, because the last week they've presented so many articles around Black Lives Matter movement Denmark and Corona, more than they've talked about the structural racism. And what I said was, are you not aware that the agenda setting theory, it's developed in the 60s by Sean McCombs, that says that, the media, to a large extent, actually create the public opinion. And if you're not aware of that, then you are not, living up to the responsibility of being a national media. So I confronted them with this. And it did not seem like they actually knew about the agenda setting theory, which is an evidence-based theory, and it's been proven in 400 scientific research, projects after. So I think that's very, very concerning. Yes. Troubling that they do not, recognize their role in keeping these structural discriminations in our society.
Is it because of ignorance, or is it because there is also an agenda in many European countries, including Denmark, that we, as the majority, white Christian majority, we have the right to have privileges?
I think it's both ignorance, and in some cases it's willful ignorance. And when we talk about willful ignorance, we talk about that you can either do it on purpose, or you can be so comfortable in the position that you are that you do not want to change the power structures. Yeah, you look the other way.
Okay.
And this is also, we need knowledge, so we can create action.
You talked about Black Lives Matters, who had 2 huge demonstrations in front of Danish American embassy, and then they went to the parliament, where you also spoke. So let's go back a little bit and talk about this movement, Black Lives Matter. It's not a new one. It didn't start with George Floyd's killing, but also years before. What is happening in America?
Yes.
Why Black people, men especially, are being killed? Yesterday, one in Atlanta got killed. Was shot in the back.
Yeah. So the Black Lives Matter movement started, I believe, in 2016. And I actually had an opportunity to sit down with one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. Her name is Opal Samedi. And the movement is actually a global movement to dismantle white supremacy. It's a global movement for the human rights of people of African descent. And we have to, acknowledge that, because it's not just about the violence and the tyranny and the brutality of the American society, but why it is happening in the American society is because it's a heavily, racist society that was founded on first the genocide of the Native Americans, and then the enslavement of millions of Africans, and being used as property. And it just takes generations of work before the mindsets of the colonizer can be eradicated, as it does take generations of work before the mindsets of the enslaved people can be eradicated, and we can have an equal, inclusive
one of the side effects of this movement now, after the killing of George Floyd, is that many people of color all over the world, in Australia, they're talking about the rights of Aboriginals. In UK, they're talking about the rights of Black and ethnic minorities. In Denmark, when there was the big demonstration where you spoke, it was not only about the Black people, but all minorities.
Yes.
Do you see it as an awakening among all people?
I do. If we look at the numbers, it was 21,000 who showed up in Copenhagen. And, the majority of these were white people, and they were there, and they were angry, and they were in solidarity. And they were saying not just, no to the brutality and the fascism of the American society towards Blacks, but they were also saying no to racism and discrimination in Denmark. And I think this is something that's changed now. People are starting to stand up. People are starting to acknowledge that to be against racism, you cannot just be non-racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to work You have to work actively to dismantle racism. And I think people are now trying, finally understanding this. So I have hopes for 2020 in terms of building, on this movement, building on the willingness, also in corporate life, to address these issues.
I know that you have been to many media, both TV and gave interviews to newspapers. And the issue, actually, the media is focusing a lot, is not about how important Black Lives Matter in Denmark is and what good work they're doing. What they're talking about is that the spokesperson of the movement in Denmark, Mrs. Sorensen, she, before the demonstration where you spoke, they sent instructions to white people that they should not be in front, but they should stay behind and not raise those slogans which are meant actually for Black people too. And there has been a lot of criticism about that. What do you think about it?
Yes, so first of all, I do not support that approach, because I think we can have, it could be even more powerful with the white allies walking next to us. But also in America, and I think that's a very good strategy, they want the white people to go in front so they can, be a shield for the white police that are, cruel to the minorities. But I also think that the focus on Mrs. Sørensen is just so disproportional and out of place. And the whole reason why she asked Black people to go in front and white people to step back was to make the invisible visible, address that we have post-colonial structures in Denmark that contribute to the, inequalities of society. And I addressed that actually today to all the heads, chief in editors of the Danish papers. And I said, you are comparing what she's asking the white people at this demonstration to segregation. You're calling this segregation. And let me just tell you that real segregation, in reality is what we've done to Black people in hundreds of years, when we've, taken their human rights from them, oppressed them, killed them. And you're talking about half an hour walk in Copenhagen in sunshine where the white people can leave if they want, compared to, these dynamics for hundreds of years where you could not leave, where legislation was in place that you were, lower than the white people. You're comparing this to a demonstration that's just blown out of proportions. And, they tried to defend themselves. They couldn't even acknowledge that maybe that was not the right thing to do. And so what the network actually did, TV2, they took all of their articles this week and they said, what articles had the negative focus on Corona and Mrs. Sørensen, and what articles had the positive focus on, dismantling racism. And if this is the whole chunk, then this chunk was the negative focus, and this chunk was on racism, on the positive, And
do the journalists do it on purpose?
That's what I told them. Even if you do not do it on purpose, you have to be aware of where you are, pointing the conversation, because you are setting the agenda.
And the end result is like that.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
In your speech in this big demonstration, you said something very interesting. You said police in Denmark does not kill us, but it harasses us. Please elaborate on that.
Yes. So if you are a non-white person, you have 70% higher chance of being charged with a felony and not being convicted of it. So, in fact, you are innocent. 70% more likely to be.
That's a large number.
That's a large number. And these dynamics are something that we see from the statistics, and we don't even have all of the numbers. So, we have to have body cams on police officers so we can register what's going on. And we have to have, a more elaborate
and the reporting. Name of their name. And,
and a more elaborate, request form with the police. So they ask the victims, do you believe this is a hate crime? And all of these things that I've also asked for in Parliament. And I have to tell you that the National Archive for Speeches in Denmark, who preserve speeches who are special value to the public conversation. They asked me 2 days ago if they could have my speech and archive that.
That's an honor.
That is an honor. Definitely. So I'm really happy about
that. Then my question to you is that Danes often accuse Black people, me and you, that we always play the race card.
Yes.
Do we do that?
So I think the whole term race card is as loaded with prejudices as the term identity politics. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to discard inequalities, inequities with feelings. Oh, you're just your feelings that's hurt. No, it's not my feelings. It's my life, and it's my possibility to live an equal and full life on the same level as everybody else. And to discard that with playing cards, I think you should just take your card games and play with somebody else and not, use that in the debate.
Exactly.
Yes.
And don't say that we are victim. We are not victim.
Of course.
We are proud people.
You are the victim of being uninformed. That's what you're the victim of.
As I said before, you were a member of parliament for 4 years for Alternative and did a wonderful job. Why ethnic minorities do not take part in politics? Mm-hmm. It's only few members in the parliament now. Why?
I think the different dynamics. There's so much hate speech in politics that I think you have to have a special character to be able to
skin.
to be able to withstand so much hatred. And I think it's also because we're not encouraging enough minorities to stand up and say, I want to run for candidacy. And also, I think it's because the minorities are not experiencing that they are being included. If they report something, if they talk about something, they're being discarded. So they're ignored. Yeah, so they're thinking, oh, well, if they're ignoring me, then I won't have a chance anyway.
So you think that we need role models, person like you, and who have been in politics, who's very visible, who is now in the media. Do you think we need more people with minority background who's actually out there?
Definitely. We need more representation in all of society, also in the media, I've been in the whole week, I've been doing interviews with our national TV stations, Demos Radio, TV2. I haven't seen any people of color there, so it's white panels and it's white employees. And, I tell them that to their face, on live television, I say, so now again, I'm sitting in front of an all-white panel talking about these issues, and they're well, and if you can't even
defensive,
and if you can't even talk about the term white in a discussion about racism, then probably you're not as open-minded as you were, claiming that you are.
But they do want to talk about N-word.
They'd love to talk about the N-word and the playing cards.
Then the question is, with all your experience and the work you are doing, you are also a member of European Network Against Racism board in Denmark. And I am very happy that you are there so that you can take over, legacy onward. Mm-hmm. Are you optimistic for the future of minorities, Black people in Denmark?
So, it comes and goes, my optimism, but I think this year I'm very, very optimistic. I think 2020 is going to be a turning point. Mm-hmm. And I see that in the willingness of especially the corporations, and business life to say we have to do something. And, and that's where the money is. And I think when they start changing their behaviors, their strategies towards more inclusive anti-racist agenda, then Parliament must follow suit. So I am hopeful. I'm hopeful, and I'm honored to be a part of INA. I think it's very important work.
INA is very happy to have you. And the last thing, I would like you to give some kind of a message of hope to our viewers. They are both Pakistanis, all other, and I'm now in English program. Everybody who's listening all over the world, our program goes, that how can they work with anti-racism? Because it's also important that we raise our voice with any means necessary, except violence, but speak up.
Yeah. So I think the message should be...
You can look in the camera.
Yeah. So I think the message should be that be hopeful and be courageous and ask questions. I think what a lot of the times we have these structures that are in place because no one questions them. So ask questions. Why do we not have more teachers that are of color? Why do we not have more books that are concerned with the lives and the identities and the problems of people of color? Why are literature so whitewashed? And I think if you ask questions and pursue them until they are answered, then you will bring more knowledge and more willingness for the people in the power positions where you are to start creating change. So that's the first step in anti-racism, is that do not accept the current status of society. Ask questions.
So my last question to you is, what are your future plans? Do you want to go back to politics?
Not now. Maybe someday. I accept to be the minister of inclusion and diversity education or something.
So you want integration ministry to be changed to Ministry of Inclusion?
I actually, propose that it shouldn't be integration minister. It's just the Minister of Diversity. And I think what we need to do is, move towards more progressive legislation. And right now, that's not happening. So that's why I'm out here instead of there. So I should have run again, but I took my candidacy down.
You mentioned the Minister of Integration now, whose father was from Eritrea and mother is Danish. I know her mother, very progressive person. And the minister he's a member of Social Democratic Party. But in the beginning, there was a hope that he would do different things than the last government did, which was quite racist and anti-minorities. But he's following the same footstep as like the former integration minister Inga Stoibia, who everybody knows how racist she was acting.
Yes.
Why we colored people, when we come to power, we start walking in the same footsteps?
Yeah, so don't say that as we all do, because I did not.
I didn't say all who come to power.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question. His agenda is very national conservative. Also his rhetoric, and I think
does he have an inferiority complex?
Maybe, but I also think it's about his position within the Social Democratic Party. I think they wouldn't allow him to have that position if he were not, confirming their nationalistic tendencies. So if he had been progressive, he wouldn't have been elected as the minister. So I think it's also because of the whole dynamics of the Danish politics and European politics, how they're turning towards the right.
And because he's a minister now.
Yeah, and I hope that in the future we'll have a more progressive.
Why don't you take a talk with him once? I wanted to interview him for my TV program, but he refused.
Oh, really?
Anyway, Roger, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure having you, and I'm sure that our viewers and listeners have benefited enormously from the wisdom of Mr. Roger Mathiasen. And as he said, speak up. Don't just keep lying down. Speak up. Every time you see some police guy who's harassing somebody or somebody who's using racist language, don't just turn around and go. Ask the person a question. So that is our request to you. And that was our program for today. I hope that our viewers and listeners have liked it. And until next week, take good care of yourself.